Benvenuti a tutti, io sono
Welcome everybody, I'm Fabio Piccolo, the responsible for Wine Meridian, and I'm very happy to moderate this meeting. I'm often called to moderate meetings like that, but there are very important occasions, this is one of such. We are talking about Pinot Grigio, which is so important for the economy of our country, and I think it is a very important occasion we are living today in order to get precious information on the field and in order to share information and to have the different point of view of experts and buyers who bring a different point of view, the foreign point of view as well. And for wines such as Pinot Grigio, this outsider point of view is very important. But before starting the three sessions, I would like to invite the President, ALBINO ARMANI, the councillor for the agriculture and agricultural resource of Friuli Venezia Giulia, Stefano Zanier, and for the province of Trento, ROBERTO, PACCHER, Vice President of the Province Council.
tutti sapete che Venezia
You know that the DOC Delle Venezie is a regional appellation, and that's why we have invited the representatives of the three regions that are involved. Mr. Caner from the regional Veneto government will join us later. We are experiencing weather alarms these days, but they are sure that they will join us in a while. Mr. Zanier from Friuli Venezia Giulia, the councillor, is going to address the audience. Good morning to you all. In particular, I'd like to say hello to my friend Albino, who has been carrying out a hard task, that is sitting as a president of a consortium. I come from a region which, in terms of wine production, has the highest ratio and accounts for the 13% of the agricultural land. So Veneto comes second, 6.5. So there is a big gap, and we have an overuse or an extensive use of viticulture compared to the overall land. I think it would be great to address a number of questions. We have such a distinguished audience, and I need to acknowledge the President for shooting high. Otherwise, it would be impossible for us to raise such questions. I'm going to raise a question or bring up a question that affects all of us. Well, we are living in a situation where we don't see the future of wine growing. The market situation is very complex, and production is as difficult. Plant diseases are to be countered, and sometimes we don't even have the tools to do that effectively. And on the other hand, there are trends that we haven't embraced yet. Now, given these circumstances, we have an additional challenge that we are to take on. So, and I'm speaking for my region. So the system we are living is well defined, and the current system, luckily enough, includes people or figures that can carry out market policies. What do I mean by policies? I mean a number of actions whereby in a particular land, a particular appellation has a chance to do what would be impossible on a public level, that is to pave the way for the appellation to find a market position whereby we can achieve the best performance possible. However, the system is also very layered or stratified. There are many concurrent appellations in the same areas, and products are moving between designations or appellations. This makes life difficult for those who are responsible for developing market policies. So we all have to find out what to do best, since we don't have a common starting point, because the figures can go up, can go down, depending on the different reclassifications. I see this as a big challenge. So in conclusion, because my time is up, I'd like to come to an end of my presentation with the question that I ask myself every day. Everyone should be asking themselves the same question. So don't you think that the production system, and I'm not talking about winemakers, I'm talking about grape producers. Now, don't you think that they don't fully understand why such market policies must be implemented? Don't you feel that sometimes there is a biased vision? So due to the dominance of particular appellations, so the production is no longer considered according to the appellation criteria, the appellation that they have to work with in order to implement market policies. But on the contrary, I see it as a productive subject only. We need a sentiment. So everyone in the supply chain must be empathetic and must be carry out policies that are managed by the consortium system, because the consortium is the only one that's entitled to represent all of them. You can develop all possible policies, but you can't enforce them, or they are ill-fitting. On the contrary, we have to make sure that everyone knows that these are necessary measures, otherwise not enough revenues would be obtained. There is a shrinkage of the land, and when there is a shrinkage, you must be ready to open up to new markets rather than do otherwise. I mean, you have to go beyond when you are having a hard time. So we should be aware that what we do is not a defense measure. It's not. We are not playing the blame game. We have to build a system that is closely knit. So, and we are all a part of the same pipeline. This is the question I've asked myself, and I haven't found an answer yet. Because what I see is that people are complaining all the time, and they take a sort of a parochial approach. Well, we have a problem. Thank you for having me here. Thank you, Mr. Zan. You have brought up questions, major questions, and The purpose of this Congress is to address such thorny questions that are all important for the future development of our industry. Roberto PACCHER, the Vice President of Provincia Autonoma di Trento. Thank you very much. He has accepted to join us last night. So I understand you have had elections recently, and that's why the councillor could not join us today. Is extending his greetings. So the new local council is being formed, and that's the reason why the president could not be here. I am the deputy president. I'd like to address you on behalf of my region and my province that has a long-standing history in terms of vine growing. I'd like to congratulate the Consortium on the achievements they have obtained. This Consortium has been around for just 7 years. The 1 billion euros is the estimated revenues, and the members of the consortium of the cooperatives benefited a lot. I'd like also to acknowledge the Trentino members of the consortium. They have contributed to reaching these flattering results, plus 8% in a dull market. So we're very proud. We are very proud from Trentino, Friuli and Veneto. We are so happy about the accomplishments of this consortium, and I'm sure this is going to be the case in the future too. Now, before coming to the conclusions, I'd like to mention the fact that we have to reject initiatives such as Ireland. So the label, it harms the health label. This is not acceptable. We know well the seal of a wonderful experience. You know what I'm talking about. We should avoid mentioning the fact that the product can harm health. Well, anything can cause harm to the health, but our wine is not a danger. It is an excellence, something that we are going to defend at all costs. Thank you, Mr. PACCHER. And now the floor is to our host, the president of Consorzio DOC Delle Venezie, Mr. Albino Armani. Thank you. As usual, I am excited and I'm sort of touched in talking to you all. I'm so proud. I'm so delighted about this meeting, and in particular about the achievements of the past 7 years. And I thank you who have been by my side over the past 7 years. I welcome you to the house of Pinot Grigio. It means that most worldwide Pinot Grigio is produced here. 85% of Pinot Grigio in Italy is produced in the 3 regions that we are represented here. So the Pinot Grigio must be mentioned as being grown in this area. This was remarked yesterday in the tasting we had. So we have to go beyond the concept of a varietal. It is a common good, rather. In the past 7 years together, well, I remember the kick-off in this very room. Betty Catherine was here. He has been the developer. He has been the driver of this idea. Well, the initial idea was very simple. That is to defend wealth that was was not protected well enough. We realized that too late, and we felt the need to roll out a project that ended up in the establishment of a Consorzio Delle Venezie. We wanted to defend the territorial culture wall. Pinot Grigio is fine in this area for pedological and climate reasons, but also for cultural reasons. The ability to be together and network, as Stefano pointed out before me. You couldn't do that in areas where, social relations were not important. This was the underlying concept. 3 regions getting together. Well, that's not an easy task. Networking is such a nice word, but it's difficult to deploy it. I can tell you that over the past years, I've never found any big hurdles. So I need to thank all of those who made this possible. Now 7 years have went by. 20 DOC appellations have got together. We have a control system. Francesco and Antonio, thank you very much for having established Triveneta certification. That's the very focus, traceability and safety of a product. Otherwise, we wouldn't have reached the results we did. 27,000 vineyard in hectares. This is the largest Italian denomination. I think that Prosecco is as big. So you understand how big it is. 250,000 bottles and 200 are DOC delle Venezie. 250 million bottles. 2 billion people. If you know the maths, they have drunk our wine. This is a fact. We are number 1 in the worldwide scenario about Pinot Grigio. Also, the quality has improved. Well, all of our wines are very good quality. Yesterday we had an incredible master class, and we presented the most fashionable and most appealing wines, and also the pinnacles of Pinot Grigio. And so they were able to cater for all strata of the market. So I'd like to end on a rosy note. The trend until the August, the trend in sales of Pinot Grigio is good, is going up. So we are offering an appellation which, unlike the declining consumptions on a global level, is increasing, and I hope this will go on in the years to come. And then the price stability. Pinot Grigio is reassuring not only for us who are doing our best to improve the quality, but also the price stability. Instability does no good, and we are harnessing the market, and we are educating the market to a price bracket that gives us ample room for growth and also good revenues. In conclusion, let me thank you for spending your time with us. First of all, the consumers, they are to be acknowledged. For those who decide to drink our wines must be thanks, and also buyers. Sometimes they are seen as adversary or opponents. That's not true. Well, buyers choose Denominazione delle Venezie because it is reassuring, and it's impossible to miss it. I thank the bottling installations and also our team, our staff. There are tears in my eyes when I think of them, and the 7,000 hectares divided by the high number of wineries. We have 10,000 households that live on what we are talking about today. I hope you will enjoy the meeting, and thank you. Thank you, President Armani. I needed to say goodbye to you. And meanwhile, Luca Rigotti, HERBERT DORFMANN, and Mr. Sartor, please take a seat on the stage. I'd like to briefly introduce them. President Armani already gave you some key figures about the importance of the Italian Pinot Grigio, and in particular the economic and production role of DOC Delle Venezie. There are a couple of points I'd like to emphasize, echoing what the President said. Well, first of all, awareness. The Italian Pinot Grigio is a wine style that for decades is taking the lion's share. Awareness goes hand in hand with responsibility or accountability. So between new trends and market evolution, and that's the title of our conversation today. We are living at a time where dramatic changes are taking place. New trends are becoming popular. And as President Armani said, plus 10% in the bottles produced and a decrease in inventory by 15% as compared to last year. This shows that in spite of the many difficulties, this wine is in a very good shape, with a particular regard to the Venezia appellation. This shouldn't be taken for granted. I've started dealing with wine 30 years ago, and I remember that 30 years ago we were wondering how long this fashion would last, and we went on, and then Mr. Cernilli at the end of the day will talk about the evolution of Pinot Grigio and how it was received by consumers and by media. The ALBINO was absolutely right in thanking the consumers, in particular international consumers, even more than domestic consumers. I fully believe that we have good outlook for the future, because the Pinot Grigio, the Italian Pinot Grigio, is responding to the current requirements. Pinot Grigio is current, it is contemporary. I mean, it is resistant to changes in fashion. Well, we have many challenges, though, and the previous speakers stressed the importance of the cohesion of the supply chain. Well, in the Consorzio DOC Delle Venezie is to be considered a sort of a workshop, an international one indeed, a place to put together fragmented units. So something. The current system is not free of difficulties. And splintering is not a good idea. This may harm the potential developments. Well, I fully believe that although there are many troubles and Pinot Grigio proves my point. We need to be sure that we still have ample room for growing. Well, wine is still a sort of Cinderella in the alcohol beverage industry. Well, it doesn't mean that the market shares are there just to be grabbed easily, but there is much room. We have a number of difficulties that we have to overcome. And I believe that the first session will help us a lot in outlining the current scenario, also in terms of regulations. I'm talking about the world and the EU emergencies, such as the question of wine and health, the question of traceability, that's equally key in, and also the subject of decreasing consumption, especially in the youth. And the Pinot Grigio, in my opinion, is a very important and interesting communication example. The Consortium is trying to resort to a modern communication in order to make wine communication less intimidating and more captivating. So I'd like to thank you, the audience, and also the speakers. Speakers can make a big contribution to this discourse. Luca Rigotti is first. I have known Luca for such a long time. He's a sort of a globe-trotter of Italian wine. We met in Toulouse in France as part of the European Wine Day days ago. And then he moved to Germany and to New York. He's traveling the world. And Luca Rigotto, if you don't know him, is the councillor of the Consortium and the president of Mezzacorona group, and is also is a member of Alleanza Delle Cooperative and the president of, and also is a member of the Copa Cogeca. Luca Rigotti, first of all, a question. Can you give us a fleeting opinion about the key issues such as sustainability? Well, I know that you are very keen on the subject of sustainability. It is a large and also wine and health. These are subjects that have been dealt with in the recent European Day. Can you tell us what are the concerns that we are to face up? Yes, Fabio, good morning to all of you, and thank you for inviting me. Well, this is a daunting task. It's difficult. In Brussels, we are doing a great job. I'd like to thank the member of the parliament. DORFMANN is always so very attentive to the issues of the wine industry. These are subjects that are not simple at all. So also, in Brussels, the agriculture is approached very differently than locally, and it's more and more fond of environmental sustainability. This also implies economic and social sustainability. Well, sometimes we are on our own. Well, especially if health comes into play. sometimes it looks as if our productions were in a cause of pollution rather than of improvement. Sustainability. So it must be economic sustainability, because agricultural industry is key in Europe. This is important not only for the wine growers, but also there is a large fallout. We have to strive to interpret an environmental sustainability which is also income generating. It's no longer a fad, it's no longer a motto, it is an actual need. And if we can handle it effectively, can we become economically successful? We and our policymakers have to outline this road for the future. If we do that, if we develop it together, its implementation is going to be easier. Mr. DORFMANN, with the Lebecca Commission last December, he was very good in introducing the concept of aware consumption. Well, not only now we are back to another similar question, non-transmissible disorders or diseases. It is up to us to create a culture. In many European countries, there is an alcoholism problem. This is not the case with the wine producing countries, but this is a problem in non-producing countries. It's not just, alcoholism is not fueled by wine only. We don't see wine as a beverage or a drink, but sort of food. And so, starting from the new generation, we have to develop a culture of moderate drinking, drink responsibly. So, wine in moderation is working hard in order to change the current views and create a culture. Wine must be perceived as a food rather than a drink. And also depends on the time of the day. Depends on one is drinking and driving. Well, it takes a long time to change the people's mindset. We have taken the first steps. Now, in Toulouse, we had a European level conversation. The wine industry difficulties emerged. In my opinion, we are facing up, or we are confronted with a number of issues such as the pandemic first, and then war scenarios. We have 2 wars broken out at the moment. This is a structural crisis. In Toulouse, we said that the wine sector must show the way for the future. This is the promise that we have adopted. We have to come up with a solution for the European wine sector. We have to work hand in hand with our political representatives and together with the Commission. The wine sector must become more dynamic. It must be independent in terms of economic sustainability, but I believe that very tough choices have to be taken. I'm giving you an example for your understanding. Distillation and then mildew, heat we cannot be proud of a sector that see the disease as a good fortune, otherwise there would be overproduction. Now, thinking of distillation, we cannot have the green harvesting and then extend the surface by 1%. And I don't believe that in terms of individual European countries, we cannot stop for a couple of years the possibility of expanding the land by 1%. I'm talking about temporary measures, mind you. If, there's going to be different behaviors between countries. The island, for instance, we have to adopt one face, one voice. And in order to build all that, we all have to do sacrifices. If we don't do that, the sector is not going to be dynamic and the income is will be disappointing. Well, of course, we have to go through some little pain now in order to make sure that the agriculture provides enough revenues and income for the farmers. Another question that came up is the following. And we have to consider diseases. We had a mildew that attacked large areas of the country. So the ministry is making provisions. Of course, very little money as compared to the damage suffered. What about we should establish funds or provisions that are funded by the European Union? We must be independent. I understand that this is not an easy task at all, but we have to do it. So, in conclusion, Fabio, let me say that we are on the eve of the time of bringing up questions and find solutions. If we don't do that, correct me if I'm wrong, but listening to what I hear on a European level, these are the difficulties that are not going to pass easily. Thank you, Mr. Rigotti. I couldn't agree more. I mean, the time is up. So unfruitful discussions are over. In Europe or in domestic countries, we have to look for a overall or overarching decision. And of course, the European Parliament has a role to play. We have Mr. DORFMANN. He works for the Commission Agriculture and Rural Development. I think that you have first-hand news about key issues such as the promotion of drinking responsibly. That's key in order to support the culture of wine, failing which it will be very difficult to encourage people to drink moderately. Thank you for having me here. Now, talking about sustainability, I feel that the word, the term sustainability in recent years and in this term that is about to come to end, this has been largely debated. I'm talking about viticulture first. Without vine growing, there is no wine. In viticulture, there are two major subjects that have to do with sustainability. One is very complex. That is the pest control product minimization, and we are taking a proactive approach. We all have this clear in mind. We have to decrease the number of chemicals, but we are also asked to produce efficiently. So pests and diseases are always around the corner, and this may cause the loss of an entire crop. In our commission, we obtained the majority of votes, and I sincerely hope that this line of reasoning, that is the decreasing 35% by 2035, I'm talking about pest control products. We are halfway through the journey, because we have reached the decrease by 20% already, and then we have the genetic improvement. They are closely connected, because that's a possible way to decrease the use of pest control. We are using more resistant plants. So in viticulture, fungicides are often used, and this is caused by two diseases only. If we could create resistant plants, we could cut down on the amount of fungicides used. So in this term, we hope that we can obtain conclusive results. Now, some thoughts about wine as an alcohol. As LUCA said, we have the question of wine use and abuse on the table. Last year, the report of the so-called Beca Commission from the European Parliament to discuss the problem, the question of cancer, fight to cancer. After a long discussion, a distinction was made between use and abuse of alcohol. Well, the European Parliament is not expected to say that alcohol is good. We all know that it may harm, but we have to make it clear that there is a difference. There is a huge gap between a moderate, reasonable use of alcohol and abuse of alcohol. Well, there are many other members of the Parliament who don't believe this, and they have submitted a new report from the Health Commission about the so-called non-transmissible diseases. But in spite of that, we are doing a very good job. We have not accepted any compromise unless a distinction is present between use and abuse. And in the present bill, there is a very minute specification of all the different entities. Distinctions are very clear. Well, these are just discussions that may have an impact on law-making as well as promotion. For instance, the European Union, as you may know, contributes a lot to the promotion of wine in terms of wine CMO and also the cross regulations on promotions. Some insist on claiming that wine is bad. And then they say if it harms the health, it cannot be funded by the European Community, and the same applies to CAP. Well, this is going to be a very dangerous discussion. The same applies to labeling. The European Commission had planned for this very week, to table a bill about the labeling of foods. Well, this is not going to be the case because no agreement was found. I'm not referring in particular to wine, but to the Nutri-Score, in particular, other questions. However, some countries have moved on their own, Ireland in particular. Well, in my opinion, this is a dual problem. First of all, content, so writing on the label that it does harm health. And all of these moves destroy the single market, because if one state writes or whatever they like on the label, then it's going to be a mess. We have to come up with a solution, a sharp distinction between some cases, such as pregnant women, or versus saying wine is harming everybody's health. Well, in Europe, pan-European reasonable decision is to be welcomed, as we did for with calories, for instance. I'd like to briefly hint at another subject matter, which is very current. I mean, no and low alcohol wine. This is also part of well-being and health issues. I've always been in favor of this possibility of producing no and low alcohol in Europe. I'm speaking up. I think that such I am against those who say that low alcohol wine is not wine. It's like alcohol and beer, or caffeine and coffee. Now we are talking about the Pinot Grigio. This is in a modern day and a very attractive product for younger customers. So the low alcohol is an occasion that we cannot miss. The European Parliament, in my view, has succeeded in obtaining a reasonable solution. So this is going to be a niche anyway. So we won't reach the same figures as no alcohol beer. We know the products we are talking about. Half of the world population does not drink alcohol for religious or the health reasons. There are countries such as Saudi Arabia or Indonesia. This is a band-aid. And you can't drink alcohol, but these countries are opening up to the rest of the world. The Italian government should transpose the European regulations, so low and no alcohol wine can exist for no alcohol. The origin may be mentioned. For no alcohol, it should not be mentioned. So the fact that the alcohol can be done only in distilleries won't help. I don't understand the reason for passing such laws that are harming the wine industry. Well, particularly so at the time where the wine consumption is slowing down. So I hope that these regulations are reviewed and that this niche market can be successful also for the Italian wine production. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Dorfmann. I think you have described very well the main issues that are on the European table. But of course, this also applies to individual member countries. I remember a question that was asked to someone in Toulouse. So what would be Europe without wine? Well, this is an all-encompassing question, but if you come to think it, that would be a huge impact, business, environment, culture, social relations. I think that even if we are required to embrace changes such as no alcohol or low alcohol, this is something that should be addressed indefinitely so. However, we have to ask ourselves what would happen if wine were not there anymore. The next speaker can help us to dispel these doubts. Sandro Sartor, the President and Managing Director of Rufino, that is part of Constellation, in a global observatory of wine, and also the President of Wine in Moderation. He has some data in store for us to understand how to make the most of the recent opportunities, such as now low alcohol, and also another question that's particularly dear to him in his role as the President of Wine in Moderation. So what should we do in order to promote moderate consumption? Thank you, and good morning, everyone. I'd like to start off from consumption trends. Well, I think back to my grandfather who drank wine twice every day, work day or holidays, summer, winter. Now, consumption patterns have changed because people's lifestyles have changed. So moderate consumption or reduced consumption is a hard fact as a result of the changing lifestyles. Other factors have contributed to have people to change their lifestyles. I'm thinking of health. Well, this applies to everyone, and not only elderly people, for as a result of their family doctor's suggestions, but also young people. I mean, people in their 20s or 30s, they have a higher rate of teetotalers. Now, if you listen to the news on TV, it looks as if all kids were drinking a lot, but that's not actually the case. The statistics prove the contrary. So, no alcohol or low alcohol wines are useful. There is a market for this. At the moment, we have a barrier that is the taste profile. Well, a wine is drank because people like it, as simple as that. There are many consumers, they are biased. They think that low alcohol wine is bad, is not tasty. They haven't even tried it, or they have tried it 10 years ago when the techniques of production were very different. So this is a present trend, attention to health. So I'm talking about the United States. However, what I say can be applicable to Europe as well. These are the data that we receive. Well, the figures are very similar. The attention to betterment. What do we mean by betterment? What is good? What is tasty? What is good for me? People want to feel better. Well, sustainable or organic, natural wines, and also, health-oriented products. I'm thinking of calories, for instance, but also supplements. Well, supplements make me good. I feel good. I feel better. And also the question of calories. People are looking for low-calorie products, such as light cheese. I like cheese, but light cheese is preferable. Low-alcohol wines can meet these requirements, lower calories. I have a given number of calories that I can use daily according to the family doctor. So low alcohol is a good contributor. Well, this trend has been sped up by the COVID-19 pandemic. Now, the overall consumption scenario is the one I've just described. Now, what is the expected market for no alcohol and low alcohol wines? This is a study that was done in the United States. Different scenarios. Scenario number one, wine performs like diet Coke or soft drinks with no sugar, or low-calorie soft drinks. That's scenario number one. If the consumer of the number of consumers that convert to this class of product, the American market would reach $11 billion. It is 1 billion. This is a very different category, so this is not very likely. or the same behavior, same pattern as with beer, low alcohol or low calorie beer. Well, the adoption rate has moved from 10 to 25%. That's the market share. If this were the case with wine, a $6 billion market will ensure for by 2030. Now, with a special regard to wine, we can say, well, this affects only the standard wines that are affected by this, or this does not affect a highly regarded or choice wines. So, in a nutshell, what I mean to say is that all patterns that have been identified, IWS are made in suggestions for the American market, up to $4 billion for the American market, which is 4 times the current American market. Well, given that, if you combine everything together, low alcohol and no alcohol, well, it's difficult to say what's going to happen. We don't know how many consumers would convert to these products. Today, the bulk of them have not tried a product that could surprise them favorably. So the products are there. What is missing is awareness. Now, European regulation exists, and there are wineries that start this sort of production, and also the allied industries are becoming involved. I'm thinking of technologies for the production of a high quality no or low alcohol. Well, this will boost the adoption rate of this segment. These are, minimum figures. And as I said, this applies to the American market, but the European market is likewise. What we expect is that this growth that affects just 2.7% of consumers, it's a tiny share of consumers, and whether the total volume is quite high, 1 billion, if penetration could reach up to 9 to 13%, and this is the expected adoption rate, well, this would cover an even larger market share. Now, to sum up, what I hope for ourselves is the following. When confronted with an opportunity like this, and due to the fact that this opportunity is accessible to the large wine producing countries, and Italy is number 1, followed by France and Spain. And Spain is very hungry for all this. In Spain, bulk wine is very popular, so that's the reason why Spain is interested in all this. Well, the European regulations exist. I do hope the Italian government can create a level playing field for the Italian consumers. Now, if we adopt more restrictive regulations, then we are shooting on our feet. We are creating hurdles for ourselves. I hope this is not the case. We don't want to be suicide bombers. And then the industry. The industry is still skeptical and fearful about this new development. So this shouldn't be the case, because the demand is there, the market is there, and is bound to expand. It is up to us to decide how to extend the market share. We can leverage the new consumers' requirements in order to recruit younger people. Well, young people do start drinking wine, but they do it fearfully. So we need to become more easily approachable for young people, so that they can penetrate this industry or this product as a low alcohol, for instance. This is a way to attract the young people. This is an opportunity in order to be winsome and enticing for young people. It would be absurd for the industry to go against the stream. This is going to be an opportunity that is unmissable. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Sarto. Your remarks are very to the point. So the wine industry should definitely make the most of this opportunity. I mean, this opportunity should not be left to other industries. Now we have the third session. We say goodbye to the panelists and invite the panelists of the next session. Now Federico Canavera has joined us, the councillor of the Veneto region. Mr. Riantonio and Mr. Velasco, please take your seats next to me. Now, we are coming to the end of the first session, and we are approaching two major themes. Francesco Iantonio is the president of Triveneta Certificazioni. This is the certification body responsible for checks and traceability of the wines. So I was told that I have mispronounced the name Consorzio DOC, says the speaker. I apologize, says the speaker. He got a wrong pronunciation in Italian. So this gentleman is responsible for ensuring the credibility of the system. So figures are so very important in this regard. So we have to be clear about figures, productions and data. This is even more important than any other criteria that may be, time limited. Thank you for prefacing my speech with these flattering words about certification. Let me greet and thank Mr. Armani. We are very close friends. 7 years ago, I was asked to embark upon this very shaky journey Well, in a very short time, we have set the stage for future developments. I'd like to take this opportunity to say hello to all the friends of DOC Delle Venezie. Now, I had in mind to share figures with you, but I changed my mind. I'm going to talk about values rather than figures. I've asked myself, why is this DOC going to be successful for the producing areas and Italy at large? Well, there are reasons for that. It is an incredible success story that needs to be examined and analyzed because it was a very quick, just 7 years, and also the volumes. The big volumes that were marketed in such a short time, and especially the awareness that is conquering on the market. This is a brand that people is more and more aware of. Well, this DOC has being aided by the previous IGT. However, I am not aware of any similar success story. 250,000 bottles by volume. It is the second largest Italian production after Prosecco. And this is an important heritage. And innovate. The ampelographic base has changed, the name has changed in such a short time. Gutsy decisions were made. And who is responsible for that? Well, first of all, wineries. The companies proved that they are ready to release an innovative product. Now, if you work in the trade business, you know very well that you have to educate the operators before educating the public. Now, it was important to introduce innovations because in the wine industry there is no company that can afford launching marketing campaigns in all markets. So we need to educate and train all operators. Then, the second success motivator is the scheme that was, the plan that was adopted by the Consortium. Well, what you did is very powerful, very strong, and very simple at the same time, based on 3 pillars. So, I'm going to mention again because I want you to remember my words. We are talking about a grape. We have heard the figures. This area is one of the the best producing areas in the world. I read in the press weeks ago the title Pinot Grigio is boosting the Italian production globally. And then we have a territorial name, Delle Venezie. Well, Venezia is one of the most beautiful areas in the world. In the DOC, this was a bravery choice, an organoleptic or sensory choice, a choice of quality in a very strong terroir. All this contributed to obtaining such figures. I'd like to echo what the previous speakers said, and I'd like to introduce macroeconomic questions, but I won't do that. I will stop here. Let me just say that the Italian wine is not always a piece of cake, if you know what I mean. There are many criticalities. I'm thinking of the size, for instance. I'm giving you some numbers for you to understand how critical some issues are. 407 appellations. Only the first 10 highest ranking account for 50% of the overall potential of the Italian appellations. Only the first 10 in 407, the first 30 account for 75% of the Italian appellations. And another reason for concern, and this shows the importance of your awareness. Now, this is my take-home message for you today, including myself. Just 1% of Italian DOCs consists of the latest 150 appellations. Now, Pinot Grigio, DOC Delle Venezia, is the second largest Italian appellation. We have to become aware of it and think it over. Well, size is a major issue. Size is, of course, a key contributor. There is something else that I'd like to bring to your attention, which is good and bad at the same time. This appellation consists of a constellation of farms. There are a complex fabric. You know, there are many appellations that intertwine, 20 appellations in the area. Prosecco, for instance. So there are complex systems and complex wineries that work and are established in the same area. And however, they should close ranks and a network. This is going to be a strength and at the same time a weakness for a consortium, because this can make it difficult for the consortium to make medium and longer term choices. But you've come a long way, dear Albino. Congratulations. Pinot Grigio DOC della Venezia, the seal of wonderful experiences. Well, this proves the point. It is a complex system that's becoming more and more attractive, and DOC delle Venezia should be at the very center of our efforts. Horizontal and vertical integrations are needed in order to boost the production locally and in Italy as a whole. I don't mean to appear too ambitious. However, if there is one thing that you should remember from my speech, is the following. Well, there is a difference. We have to understand that what we are doing is part of a collective wealth, and DOC del Venezia is at the very center of these collective goods, as the president, as the councillor of the Friuli Venezia Region said before me. Then, second point, you have chosen the DOC segment. Not only that, the consortium has chosen to put a government seal on the bottles. This is a very challenging choice. And also, this also applies to traceability. Well, Italy is second to none. And we can say it very clearly. We can trace, track, and certify any single bottle that is released onto the market. So the certification bodies which I am a manager of certify over 2 billion bottles per year. So, and we release a sort of a driving license for the market. So this is a sign that we have fully taken upon ourselves the responsibility that pertains to us. This is in a collective wealth, a whiff. Any instabilities are detrimental to the international market. But in this DOC, there is no uncertainty. There is a trust. There is a confidence. There is a stability. Results are there. You may not argue the results are not there. You are living in a happy island against the European and Italian backdrop, and you have to rejoice this well-being or this welfare. Now, in the choice of choosing the pyramid, of certifying the wine and releasing the seal, or it was a win-win situation. The results are being deployed now and will be even more in the future. There are evolutions also about IGTs. We are working on that. We have to introduce a sharp separation. In order to do that, you have to do some maths. You have to count the bottles of IGT, and you will see what the future has in store for us. It takes time. It takes farsightedness and perseverance, all virtues that you're not failing. Some data showing what the certification body is doing. Last year, 2022, 6,421 operators have used 641 wine maker, 570 for wine makers, 333 bottlers. Some of them are playing different functions. That's why it's more than 100%. And between bottling, sales and everything, 255 movements have been certified by the certification body. All of them, we haven't missed one. All of them have been certified by Trento Certificazione, 309 inspections in the field, 225 in the cellar, 1,684 samples for a total of 12,000 analytical items, 366 tasting panels. Why all that? Because we believe in this. The Consortium and ourselves are working very seriously. 77 years ago, the Consortium and Società di Certificazione, we have chosen our positioning, our grape, we have chosen the name, and we wanted to offer the market the marvel of the wonders that is your symbol today. You are doing the right thing, believe me. Let me get back to the question of wealth. Now, we watch around from the vineyard, from the row. We have to look at this question differently, how this appellation can contribute to the welfare of Italy, because it is a collective wealth. I mean, mind you, if you were to bruise the image of the consortium. So I need to congratulate the vintners and the winemakers for the journey they have entertained. Well, Pinot Grigio represents Italy and this territory in the Italian wine in the world. Thank you, Mr. Antonio. I'm sorry I had to cut you off in the middle of the sentence, but you have overshot your time allotment by 4 minutes. So thank you for pointing this out. Thank you for speaking so highly of Consortium Delle Venezie, which is responsible for overcoming the problem of appellation, fragmentation, and splintering. Riccardo Velasco, il Director of CREA nel Consiglio della Ricerca e Agricoltura. Well, this gentleman should have spoken as first in theory. He is going to make the history of Pinot Grigio in an area like Pinot Grigio, which has a propensity for high-quality viticulture. This is exactly the area that has played home to Pinot Grigio. Well, thanks a lot to Mr. Armani and to all who made this event possible. I'm sharing my memories with you, romantic memories, mythical memories. And at the same time, I wanted to be very concrete because the technologies, we have a metabolomic analysis and DNA analysis show that Pinot Grigio is a very powerful wine. Well, the word responsibility has been mentioned often today. CREA is making sure that these wines represent Italian production of the world. The noble origins of the wines start from here in Austria, Magna Graecia, where the ancestors of the great international wines were born. Well, this is shown by the DNA. Through DNA analysis, we know the past, and we can trace back the evolution. What would be Europe without wine? That's a question that was put by the chairman. It would be nothing, because the wine has been a glue of people from Caucasus and in other areas brought together by wine. This is a great wealth together with olive orchards and vineyards even more, because they have spread even more widely in Europe. So there were movements around the coastal areas and the ships that are preserved in museums. There were movements and shipments, and that was the reason why viticulture has become popular in France. The Pinot family was born there 2000 years before Christ, and this gave birth also to Aglianico for south of Italy, or Teroldego from the area where I live, that is Trento. As part of these shipments, through natural mutations. There has been an evolution of Pinot Bianco and Pinot Grigio. In the studies that were carried out at San Michele all'Adige, it was shown that between white and Bianco Grigio there is no relationship. They are unrelated. This is a DNA analysis showing that Pinot Noir and Pinot Bianco go through the same mutations. And so there shouldn't be an intermediate passage between them, because if this mutation that is very rare could not go back. This is a return mutation. So the Pinot Bianco and Pinot Grigio were born at two different events. Mesystematic tissues show this. This is the top, where L1 layers give rise to the external part of the skin, and L2 to the internal one. Pinot Grigio is an heterozygous with both alleles of both layers, 1 and 2, with a dominance of the black color. The white loses both alleles, and the Pinot Grigio in the external layer keeps in a small amount of anthocyanins that's giving rise to the Ramato color, which is unique to Pinot Grigio, and then Pinot Verdatro, that's another mutation. We have proven that throughout its fine evolution, Pinot that was born in Burgundy as a family, scattered around Europe, spread throughout Europe, and reached the Venezia region. And Rulander and Grand Burgunder, these are the different denominations. Pinot, and it reached Germany. And then in the Balaton Lake, there was a flourishing. Well, there are different names to define the same grape. That's called Tokai, or Monaco Grigio, Grey Monk. So, and Tokai Grigio was sold in Friuli in 1915. Now you can see Poggi in 1939, a scholar of this philosophy, has after tasting the Pinot grape in the province of Florence, suggested the Venetian and Friuli vintners to grow this grape. Well, this grape could not reach the same level as the French counterparts, but of course it had a good propensity for the production of highly regarded wines. It was sold as a Tokai Grigio, but we know that it had nothing to do with the Tokai. Udine, and later on in the Mogliano Veneto estate, 20 hectares of vineyards were grown, including Pinot Grigio. And in 1932, with the Conegliano-based nurseries, well, from Conegliano, Pinot Grigio was spreading all over. This was a wine that was disease resistant or tolerant, adjusted better than any other. This is the noble origin of the wine. The Rochedo nurseries, 1915 and 1933, it is present as a Tokai Grigio once again. And that was actual Pinot Grigio that was flourishing in those areas. Well, this is a point, this is a lesson that I've learned from all of you, and we have been repeating all over again that this is a great Italian production. It has a unique characteristic. Ramato, as a matter of fact, is due to the fact that the external layer of L1, the meristem, is a layer that still can produce anthocyanin, which is not the case by the second cell layer. Is 90 milligram per kilogram of dried matter is produced. That's very little as compared to Pinot Noir, which is a grape poor in anthocyanins and esters, 720 milligram per kilogram dry matter. So 10 times the amount of Pinot Grigio. However, thanks to this skin component, partial or total vinification on the skin provides this wonderful color, this copperish color, which is unique. Now, in recent times, CREA, in order to avert frauds, has developed a new system. It is impossible to analyze the wine DNA when masts are mixed. They should not be there. In Garganega and Trebbiano, as masts that were added to Pinot Grigio masts, we have included some components that are typical of Trebbiano Garganega, 4 components of Garganega and 2 of Trebbiano. They're not present in Pinot Grigio, so there's no way. I mean, you can't cheat. So this is an additional guarantee. I mean, there are no loopholes that you can use in order to counterfeiting something that should not be there. And then a component that is not present in Pinot Grigio and present in all others. That's another marker. For CREA, in cooperation with other institutions, we can ensure the present and especially the future. TEA have been mentioned by a previous speaker. These are biotechnologies for the production of disease-resistant varieties without changing anything about the metabolic profile of the variety. I can break you this news. Pinots are more supple than other varieties. It is more difficult for Glera. Sangiovese is more fortunate in this regard. So new technologies can be implemented in order to improve Pinot wines and obtain Pinot Grigi that do not get sick or are more resistant and to powdery mildew. Thank you.
Grazie al dottor.
Thank you, Dr. Velasco. Thank you for telling us about the noble origins of Pinot Grigio. And in the second session, we shall see how we can do the most of what is there. So the possibility of improving the wine's positioning depends on the awareness of the value of the appellation, in particular the Pinot Grigio delle Venezia.
Vi ringrazio di aver accelerato le pratiche del caffè, sembra un momento pericoloso nei
so soon. So breaking for coffee is always a dangerous time. People like lingering. Now we have been reached by Mr. Canner from Provincia Autonoma di Trento. Can you please address the audience? His region is key in the production of Pinot Grigio. This gentleman is from the Veneto region. I apologize. Well, I'm so sorry for missing the first session of the meeting. Mr. Zanier, my colleague, was here and to represent me. They gave me the possibility of addressing you twice. I'd like to thank the President Armani and all speakers, and also Mr. DORFMANN from the European MPs. Even if I joined you later, I am fully aware of what you said, especially what Stefano Zannier said. We have started working together very closely because we are like-minded about agriculture and vine growing. I'd like to take up some points that were made. First of all, thank you, ALBINO, and thanks to the Consorzio for the giant work they have accomplished. This is a very important appellation, and we know that the home to Pinot Grigio is here, Triveneto, that is Veneto, Provincia Autonoma di Trento, and the Friuli Venezia Giulia. So we are trying to tune in the farmers and the vine growers, and hopefully in the future the Consortium will no longer be limited to the protection of the appellation, but also the management of installations and the planting of the vines that are our collective good. So production management, that's what I mean. This is also a quantitative component. The releasing onto the market of larger quantities, and in addition to quantities, also quality must be upheld. So we're living in a world where there are alternatives. I think you have discussed them all. I'm referring to no alcohol wine and other possibilities that are marketable. So we have to be very cautious about what we do. Well, as Mr. Velasco said before me, sustainability is key. Well, I'm saying this as a mantra. It's not only environmental, but also economic and social sustainability. However, in Italy, the word sustainability is closely linked to the environment, which is wrong, because also the cohesion funds and all funds are meant for farmers to make an income, not only environmental protection. This leads me to the same proposals made by Mr. Velasco. We have to come up with alternatives. So organic cannot be the only answer. We, in Veneto, organic vine growing is not easy due to the intrinsic features. So I think that the disease-resistant grapes and the genetics are fundamental tools. Now we can carry out field tests as a result of some tools that are available in institutions such as Veneto Agricultura. Together with the research centers of university, we can explore this subject, because this is fundamental for the future developments. Otherwise, as a result of the climate change, we are going to end up in trouble. Thank you for having me here. We are by your side. We are working together on the management of production, and we are there to implement whatever it takes to work and speak as one voice. Only in this way can Pinot Grigio continue to be successful globally. Thank you. If you wish, you can sit in the first row.
Now I change also the language because this part of this session is in English. I hope everybody can understand, but many of you, they have the headphone. So I'm quite honored to have here today two of my favorite observatory of the wine business in the world. Luli Hested, which is the founder of Wine Intelligence and non-executive director of IWSR. And I'm honest, I stolen from her many of the information that I have regarding how's going on in the international market. So thank you, Luli, really for your great job in Wine Intelligence and now also in the IWSR. So I start from you, and mainly you can able to bring us in the USA market, the new trends. What's going on from your point of view?
Perfect. Well, I'm going to stand up actually, just so that I can see everybody a little bit more easily and also see the screen. A very kind introduction, and it's now been, dare I say, nearly 30 years that I've been researching with wine consumers around the world, wine market data, trying to understand how market dynamics work today, but for all of us, most importantly, in the future, and what motivates consumers today, and again, most importantly, for all of us in the future. So in a very short amount of time, I'm now going to try and summarize that from a US market perspective. Summarizing the US market for all of us is very tricky, as we know. More than 80 million regular wine drinkers are not the same person. But having said that, we can see some conclusions and draw some trends. So given the short amount of time that we all have, because there are other brilliant speakers, well, I should say there are brilliant speakers to come after me, I'm going to set the scene really in terms of what's happening in the US. Thinking about it from two sides. What are the market dynamics and what are the consumer dynamics? And what can we learn from that for the future opportunities of all of your businesses? So if we're thinking about market dynamics, we really need to be thinking about the combination of volume and value. Now, increasingly over my 30-year career, looking at market data and consumer data, the conversation amongst global wine businesses has very much shifted from thinking about strategy and KPIs or achievements from a volume perspective and moved to a value perspective. So I've seen that really big shift. So if we look here at the US market, now the first thing I want to point out is that these two charts or sets of charts are on different scales. So if we look first of all at beer, so let's start in beer. So this is total volume of beer consumed in the US. And we can see that steady decline from 2019 to 2022. Minus 2.8% CAGR, so that volume decline. If we then look at RTDs, wine, spirits, and hard cider, as we would call it in the US, shrink that picture down to about a quarter of the volume of beer. Now, the reason I've expanded it here is just so we can see the bars, but it's much smaller proportionally and from a volume point of view. You can see the only category growing from a volume perspective in the US market are spirits, and only marginally. All of the other categories, led by wine, are decreasing in volume in the US market. However, if we now look at this from a value perspective, so what is the total value by category? Again, shrink down the RTDs and the ciders. They're much smaller, they're on different scales. But what we can see here is, with the exception of wine and cider, but a very small category in the US, actually all of the other categories are growing from a value perspective. So volume down, but value up, again with the exception of wine. Our value decline in wine in the US proportionally is smaller than our volume decline. So that's a very long way of me saying premiumization is happening across all beverage alcohol categories in the US. Volume is down, value proportionally is up. So what's happening from a consumer dynamic perspective? What are we seeing amongst US drinkers? Well, the first point is that around a third, and this has actually been increasing, it is now 37% of adults of legal drinking age in the USA do not consume alcohol. That's abstainers. If I give you a little bit of context here, in Italy, 90%, 90, of adults of legal drinking age consume alcohol, 10% abstain. So that's just a little bit of context for us. If we also think about this, on average, American adults consume just over 11.4 litres of wine per year. That puts the US 47th in the world in terms of total volume per capita of consumption. Again, compare to us here in Italy, over 40 litres a year. Well done, Italy, and Portugal, and Switzerland, and Denmark, and much else of Europe. If you look to the right-hand side there, you'll also notice something else I've pulled out. And this is very much building on what Sandro was telling us earlier. So absolutely our datas are aligned in support, which is great. So 54%, so that is over half of younger drinkers of legal drinking age in the USA. Over half of those adults of legal drinking age do not consume alcohol. Over 50%, 54%. Even in countries like the UK, if we just do that as a comparison, we see 19%, so near a fifth, of adults abstaining from alcohol. But amongst that younger Gen Z in the UK, that goes up to 34%. Not as much as the States, but still proportionally higher. So our participation rate's changing. We hear a lot about, oh, young people aren't drinking wine. Particularly young people in America are not drinking wine. Actually, that's kind of true, but also not true. So the blue line here is the percentage amongst that age group at that time. So back in 2010, what proportion of people who at the time were aged between 21 and 24 were consuming wine? Well, that's about 35%. That has dropped now to those younger 21 to 24-year-olds in the US, now at about 30%. But you'll see across all other age groups, actually the participation rates in wine have increased. So there are more Americans proportionally drinking wine than there used to be. So you might say to me, well, how come then you've just showed me that volume's going down? That doesn't make sense. What has happened is a number of factors. One, that consumers are drinking wine less frequently. So they're still drinking wine, but just not as often. Why? Because they're drinking more other categories more frequently. So they have a bigger portfolio of beverage alcohol and non-alcohol. When they do drink wine, because of abstinence and moderation, the overall volume of alcohol we are consuming and Americans are consuming is reducing, and the proportion of abstainers is increasing. So we've got all of those things happening. So the statement that young people don't drink wine or people don't drink wine is not true. People are still participating in wine, but their relationship with the category, particularly in the US, has changed because of those factors that I just described. And what's happening with Pinot Grigio? Clearly very important given the context of why we're all here. Actually, it's been quite stable. This is the proportion of regular wine drinkers in the US that consume each or have consumed these varietals in the last 6 months. And you'll see actually that all of the varietals, including Pinot Grigio, are quite stable, and Pinot Grigio is up there as number 2, given the dominance of domestic Chardonnay in the market. That's a really strong position to be in. The only one that's changed actually is white blend. And again, that's not surprising given the dynamics of the US market. So rounding up, future opportunities. We've seen from the data earlier that the high volume, low value part of the market, of the wine market in the US, is becoming increasingly less important. And again, whether you like my message or not for your business, I am presenting the data and the evidence for you. We can look at it here. So the darker line is our forecast at IWSR by price band in the US for wine. So starting at the top with the lower prices, going down to the higher prices. The mid-blue color, the second bar, is what's happened in the last happened in a 5-year period. But we're looking at patterns here, and we can see that all of the forecast growth will come from the higher price bands in the US, not from the lower price bands. And why is this? Well, we know that there's been a casualization. Not sure that's a great word, and apologies to the translators if you're trying to translate that one. Becoming more casual in restaurants, in bars, in pubs, you know, the dining with the burger on the plate and the beer, that idea that there's a shifting dynamic in the on-premise and also increasing casualization, use the word again, in our at-home. So if you look, for example, fun fact, at the amount of kitchen islands proportionally in US kitchens, compared with 5, 10, or 20 years ago, that has increased significantly because people gather, eat, and socialize around kitchen islands rather than dining tables. So what will consumers want? First of all, they'll want distinctiveness. By distinctiveness, we mean memorability. Can you remember the wine it is that you like, or the drink? Again, amongst US regular wine drinkers, 50%, half of US regular wine drinkers can only recall 1 or 2 wine brands, the names of, unprompted. Only 6% of US regular wine drinkers can name more than 8 brands of wine. So being memorable in our System 1 fast-thinking brain is imperative. Also giving reasons for consumers to have a connection, because that helps build memories. You know, we are here with your DOC in one of the most admired places in the world. That is such a strong connection and memory builder for consumers. Interestingly, we're also seeing a movement towards refreshment. So a lot of the spirits growth we see, not just in the US, but in other markets, comes from actually mixing in cocktails. So the margarita being the #1 cocktail in the US. And sort of counterintuitively, also exploration. So we're seeing really strong growth in categories like bourbon in the US. So my key takeaway, growth in the US will come from the premium price points. Thank you.
Really thank you, Luli. I will have many questions and comments about your speech, but we are really short time, and maybe later I will do by myself, but really thank you. So another extraordinary observatory of the economy of the wine is Vivino. And Christy Paris, she's the head of global partnership in Vivino. Vivino, we can consider the biggest wine community in the world, 50 million of people. So you see the same things that Luli explained us. So your community, what they are doing, what they think about the wine, and mainly about the Pinot Grigio. Christy, thank you. It's your turn.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, first of all, thank you very much. Thank you for inviting Vivino today. I'm delighted to be here and talk about the story of Pinot Grigio according to Vivino's community of 66 million people now. I'm going to play the pregnancy card and remain seated, if that's all right. So I have a bit of an ambitious agenda for 12 minutes, but I'd like to start by introducing Vivino and reviewing our capabilities. And then we'll take a look at the Pinot Grigio data trends that we're seeing on Vivino. And then we'll talk about converting that data into strategy via the Delle Venezia Vivino partnership. And if we have time, some fun facts. So Vivino was founded in 2010 for one reason, and that was that finding the right wine is too complicated. So over the last 13 years, we've been working to solve for that problem, and we like to say that we've built the most influential community in the world. We have kept our mission the same since our founding 13 years ago. We help people drink the right wine every time. Our users have come to rely on us to do this, and that's what they trust us for. And speaking of users, we do have over 66 million users globally. We are the world's largest wine community, the largest wine database in the world, the largest wine e-commerce platform in the world, and the #1 wine app in the world. The other number on this slide that I want to highlight is 2.5 billion bottle scans. Now, for those who are not familiar, the bottle scan is our primary function of our app, and I'll talk about that more in a moment. But I want to highlight this number because it took us 10 years to reach 1 billion scans, and it took us less than 2 years to reach the next 1.5 billion scans. So I think that really illustrates the growth trajectory that we've been on the last couple of years. So looking at our core functionality here, we have the wine label scanner. So this is our primary use case. It's how 85% of the traffic comes through the app. You simply hold a physical bottle in front of the app, scan the label, and you instantly get all of the information you need to know about that bottle. From the grape, the producer, the region, the average price, the rating, the review, the tasting notes, everything you need to know in order to decide whether it's the right wine for you. And it's important to note that these scans typically take place at the point of purchase or potentially at the point of opinion formation. You're at a dinner party, you're at a restaurant, and you want to remember the wine and learn more about it. So that's our wine scan function. We also have the ability for users to engage by rating and reviewing our wines, or your wines, I should say. And then just like Netflix can make personalized recommendations based on your viewing behavior, we also use our personalization technology to analyze your user behavior and the user input taste profile, and we can make personalized recommendations based on that. We can also allow users to search for wines by grape, by country, by food pairing, or even by discount available in that market. And in 18 markets, we do offer e-commerce, and you can buy the wine right there from your phone. So now I'm going to flip over to our user engagement data when it comes to Pinot Grigio. I just want to highlight, I'm going to go through these data slides at a pretty high level, just in the interest of time, but this presentation will be shared afterward and you can delve deeper if you're so inclined. So I want to introduce the wine scan function as the best lens to view a lot of this data. And that's because not only is it our primary use case where the majority of traffic comes through the app, but we can view scans as a product of consumer interest and physical distribution. So we'll look at a lot of our data through the lens of the scans. So to start, we're going to look at the popularity of Pinot Grigio or Northern Italy Pinot Grigio in the US in the past 12 months. So you can see where it ranks here behind California Chardonnay, California Sauvignon Blanc, New Zealand Sauvignon Blanc, and then in the number 4 spot is Northern Italy Pinot Grigio. This is compared with all other white wine styles in the US in the last 12 months. So number 4, overall white wine style, number 2, international. So that naturally leads us to the next question of where is Northern Italy Pinot Grigio the most popular? So you can see here, these are the countries where Pinot Grigio has the largest share of scans compared to all white wines in the past 12 months. So the top ones here, we have Russia, Ukraine, and Canada receiving the largest share of scans as compared with other white wines. So it's great to see where things are popular in the past 12 months, but I thought it would also be interesting to take a look at the year-over-year trends and see where is Pinot Grigio's popularity growing. So now we're going to look at the year-over-year trends, and we see the scan share growth of Pinot Grigio is the highest in Sweden with almost 13% growth, followed by the Netherlands and Australia. So, of course, the increased scan share growth could indicate a really good opportunity for strategic growth initiatives in those markets. We'd be remiss to not look at where we are also trending down, though. So what I've done is pull 7 key markets. These key investment markets are the US, the UK, South Korea, Japan, Germany, Canada, and Brazil. So you see a bit more of a mixed bag in these year-over-year trends and how Pinot Grigio's popularity is in flux. One market that I want to call out on this slide is Japan. So you can see it's just a little bit down, 0.4% down year over year. The reason I want to highlight this is because now we're going to flip over to a different lens. So we've been looking at scans as the way to view our data, but when we flip to the next slide here, we're looking at the same markets, the same graph representing the same data, but instead of scans, we're now looking through the lens of a page view. So a page view on Vivino is different than a scan. A scan we often use as a proxy for supply because it represents physical distribution. You have to have the bottle in your hand in order to take that scan. Page views, which in this case are excluding scans, come from organic interest. So a user is typing in a text search, they are reaching the page from an Explore query within the app, or they're clicking on a personalized recommendation that Vivino makes. They do not have the physical bottle in front of them. So if we look at scans as a proxy for supply, we can also look at page views as reflecting demand. So now when we look at these same markets, we see some slight fluctuation, but Japan is really interesting because we see this huge growth trend in page views. And if we're subscribing to that theory of supply and demand, we see that demand is far outpacing supply in Japan according to our data, and that could signify an interesting distribution opportunity. Now let's take a look at our ratings, which is arguably what Vivino is best known for. So we took a look at the mean rating for all white wines on Vivino, which is 3.70. I've pulled these same 7 key investment markets, and you can see how each market rates Northern Italian Pinot Grigio over the past 12 months. So as you can see, they all rate at or above average. I will say none of them are exceptionally high. The highest rating here we have is 3.87 in Brazil. And it's important to note some cultural nuances as well, that Japan is more likely to rate the wines a little bit below the global average, while Brazil is more likely to rate wines above the global average. And now for some sales trends. Our top 5 countries for Pinot Grigio sales on Vivino are the US, Netherlands, Germany, Denmark, and Italy. This is by the bottles sold share. So we have the bottles sold share on the left, and then we have the year-over-year trend on the right. Great to see some growth, particularly in the Netherlands, some very significant declines in Denmark and Italy. There are several explanations for that, but if it's something that you're seeing reflected in your own wine sales, it's definitely worth exploring. And another way for us to look at some sales trends is by the average sold price of Pinot Grigio bottles on Vivino. So this isn't just available bottles, this is the data for the bottles that were actually sold on Vivino. So the blue indicates a price increase year over year, and the gold indicates a price decrease year over year. I'd like to highlight on this slide Sweden, which has the most significant price decrease. It went from $14.88 per bottle to $10.94 per bottle. And you might recall a few slides ago that Sweden also had by far the highest increase in scan share growth. So there's a couple conclusions that we could draw from that correlation. Now let's take a look at what users say about Pinot Grigio. This is based on over 108,000 reviews of over 3,000 wines. So you can see how users are rating the wines on various scales and the words that they're using to describe the wine. The larger the font, the more frequently that word appears in the text reviews. So the data is great to have, but of course, ultimately we need to convert that into a meaningful strategy. So let's zoom out and take a look at some high-level takeaways. Obviously, regional trends are differing dramatically. So this opens up a lot of opportunity to look at distribution, to market positioning, to pricing. But most importantly, we need to understand the underlying why. Why are our users giving sort of mixed reactions and a lukewarm reception? If we want to shift that, we need to understand the motivation behind it. So how do we action this data? This is where the Delle Venezia and Vivino partnership comes in. I'm really excited about this partnership for a few reasons. We are used to working with regional associations all over the world for promotional activations and robust campaigns to deliver their regional messaging. But the Delle Venezia partnership has a new component for us that we're extremely excited about. So when we started this conversation quite a while back, we started talking about some goals here, and we have agreed that we need to raise the awareness and enhance the brand messaging around the grape and, of course, Delle Venezia as a region, and educate consumers about the DOC. We also need to engage your most valuable audience of potential customers. And here's this new component. We need to identify the key factors in consumers' decision-making and their perspectives on Pinot Grigio. And then we also need lots of data to support our market intelligence-based decisions. So to deliver on those goals, we have 3 components of the partnership. We have a robust email campaign with engaging storytelling content and educational highlights. And now the new aspect of this partnership is the market research component. So we will, for the first time, be incentivizing our users to complete a survey where they'll be able to give subjective, qualitative feedback about their motivation and consumer behaviors when it comes to purchasing Pinot Grigio or purchasing something instead of Pinot Grigio. And then we'll look at data, a lot of the data that we saw today and much, much more, which will be delivered to the consortium on a monthly basis to help support their decision-making. So in addition to the partnership that I've just described, we also have a lot of other ways that we work with industry partners. So wineries, for example, we also have brand partnerships that really leverage the user journey with your wines on Vivino. We also have our marketplace. We are the largest wine e-commerce platform in the world, and we're always happy to help increase your availability globally to our millions of users. We now have the ability to help you advertise. This is a new function in the last couple of months. We can now drive incremental sales in any country, not just our e-commerce countries, with push marketing campaigns. And then we have our retail program, where we can bring the Vivino digital experience to life in a retail environment. And this has proven very successful with very significant sales increases in those retail settings. I know we're a bit over time. I'm going to sneak in some fun facts really quickly if I can. It's just the one slide here. So in the past year, Dutch users are the most frequent scanners of Delle Venezia wines compared to the rest of Europe. Over the last year, Danish scanning of Delle Venezia wines has grown by 16% compared to all other Italian wines. And Americans rate Italian wines higher than American wines. And that's everything I have today. Thank you.
Thank you, Christy, really. Thank you. I think you gave us really important information, and Vivino can be really a great platform, and I'm happy, and I want to congrats to the Consorzio of DOC Delle Venezia, because I believe that the partnership with you can be really helpful. So thank you very much again. Thank you, Luli. Thank you, Christy. You can go down. So if the other speakers, they are ready, they can come inside. I ask to David Glucksmann, Daniele Cernigli, and Felicity Carter. So now you are on the end of the last session. Daniele, you can stay on the center, on the stage. So thank you very much. We understood with Luli and Christy much more about the market of Pinot Grigio in the United States, but also with Vivino, we had really a large observatory. What is they consider the market, the consumer, they consider Pinot Grigio, and mainly the Pinot Grigio of Delle Venezia. Now with Devi, Felicity, and Daniele, we want to understand more how we can promote the Pinot Grigio in the world, which is a very important goal, because as we saw before, there are some critics points, for example, the positioning, but also how to find the key factor to increase the knowledge, the awareness about Pinot Grigio Delle Venezia in the world. So I start with David Glucksmann, with the CEO of Wine Folly. Wine Folly, probably many of you, they know very well, is a top 5 research on the topic of the wine globally, with over 20 million of annual users, probably are more, as I saw with Vivino. And Wine Folly also is one of the most authoritative digital platforms for providing information, but also training on the wine. And as we saw before also with Christy, the increase of the culture about Pinot Grigio, about the wine, is very important to increase also the consumption and also, of course, the economy. So, David, what you can tell us about how to promote the Pinot Grigio, Italian Pinot Grigio and Delle Venezia in your market, but mainly with what we call wine education?
Great. First off, thank you so much for having me here. It's been a while since I've been to Italia, and yeah, it's been a pleasure so far. So I'm going to stand up as well, because I like standing. Feels good. So I've got 12 minutes. I'm going to spend 4 minutes on each section here. So intro, talk about some data, and then what can you do? So first, I just wanted to expand a little bit more on where we're from, who we are, and what do we do. So just quick point of context, this is a photograph from where I live. I live in Kelowna, British Columbia in Canada, and it is a wine growing region, mostly cool climate. So Pinot Gris is actually something that grows in our backyard. This is me and my dog named Goliath. There's a joke in there somewhere if you pick up on it. And I have been working in the wine industry now for about 15 years. I've founded or co-founded and led several companies, including retail, a beer club, wine club, technology, flash sales, etc. We've actually worked with Vivino in the past as well, doing distribution in Canada. And then prior to that, I've worked with a couple brands that you may recognize from across the world as well. And of course, Wine Folly is powered by 2 very amazing people amongst much other people on our team, which were entirely distributed. Christine is based in London, England, and Madeline Puckett is based out of Seattle, Washington. both two very acclaimed, powerful women. Wine Folly, at the end of the day, connects people to wine. As already been said, we've been around since about 2011. Roughly 20 million people connect with us. We've sold 500,000 copies of our books, which are translated into many languages across the world, and continue to sell quite well throughout all markets. And came out in 2019, the most recent one. Who do we reach? So this is really one of the big differences between us and maybe some of the other people that you hear about, and specifically where you're getting data from. We reach a younger demographic. So Gen Z, millennials, that is really our bread and butter. So our website gets roughly about 20 million people viewing all of our content all the time. Instagram, we're one of the largest wine type profiles on the platform, period. And again, you can see very heavy on the 25 to 34 and 35 to 44. Facebook, same thing, but Facebook just generally goes a bit more boomer, if you've heard that term before. In terms of where are people, mostly United States, but we are global, primarily English speaking. However, since translation online is so good these days, we actually see a lot of emerging market users come out as well. And then just briefly, I want to cover what are the things we make and why they're impactful before I start getting into the data. So at the end of the day, it's about wine education. And we take a very modern take on it. We're entirely online, and there's no in-person style to whatever we do. So because of that, we're very popular with people who like to use technology. But as well, we take a big take here that we want to work directly with the producers, specifically in regions that we're focusing education on. So you'll see a little bit more about this here. These are some region guides we made. You'll notice Alto Adige is one of them. So we worked with every single producer that was willing to work with us out of Alto Adige to contribute data specifically into the guide to help producers, which no one else does this. It's huge. Mini guides is another thing fairly new for what we're doing, which is kind of the same thing. Our example here is we did one for Virginia, which is the United States, and no one knows about Virginia wine, period. But most recently when we did this, it had some of the highest engagement numbers we've ever seen. People are hungry to learn about new regions and new styles of wines, and Virginia is a great example of that. We're also doing printed guides now as well, with Paso Robles being one of the newest ones. Paso is now starting to be considered like one of the new emerging markets of California, which sounds kind of funny to say out loud, but it's like the new Napa. Don't quote me on that, but that's kind of the rumblings. We also send out a newsletter every single week. 150,000 people get that. Lots of stuff. We do a bunch of maps, and we do courses. Most recently, we launched Tuscany as our, that was last week actually, one of the fastest selling courses we've ever put on, ever. Data. So, keep in mind, this has to do with education data. So it doesn't have to do with scans or retail sales or anything like that. It's purely based on people's intent to try and find out information. So I'll pause on this next slide for a second. So right now, just as a point of reference, when you search for, say, Cabernet Sauvignon on Google, the first result will be an article from Wine Folly. And this happens across many top searches across the world. People are looking for information. They will find it through Wine Folly. So here's some data in terms of top ranking grapes or varieties, depending how you want to classify it, from 2 years ago. So the thing to mostly highlight, ooh, lasers. Cabernet Sauvignon, about 19%. And then we fast forward to the past 12 months, things have changed. And the big change is Cabernet Sauvignon dived to 13%. And look at that, Pinot Gris is 15th on the board. Kind of interesting. Looks a little bit different when you try and split it up between world interests. And again, I can't emphasize this enough. This is people looking to learn about something, right? They're not buying it, they're learning. So on the right, with the United States, stuff that's in yellow has gone up in rank, and stuff in orange has gone down compared to the rest of the world. You'll notice Pinot Gris, which we combine Pinot Gris and Pinot Grigio together, is still 15th. But ALBINO being up second is interesting, to say the least. Then just as a point of context too, in regards to like regionality and things that are of interest for people to learn about yet again, Francia wins, Italia second, United States third, and then it drops off quite quickly from there. This was fascinating for me to take a look at this data when putting together this presentation. Is we have many, many articles. It's well over 1,000 articles we've written over the years, and our Pinot Gris, Pinot Grigio articles have skyrocketed in the past year. Couldn't tell you why, but there's something here. So nearly 1,000% up in regards to this article, and then again, 1,200% up for 3 types of Pinot Gris. So I don't know what's going on, but there's definitely interest in learning about Pinot Gris, Pinot Grigio. That's happening this year. Now, when we take a look at third-party data, so this has nothing to do with Wine Folly, but I thought it would be interesting to take a look at, because with all the wine conferences I go to, I never really hear anyone talk about it. So I felt like, hey, maybe this is interesting. So the big thing to look at here is that this is from a company called SEMrush, which they do search engine marketing. You can see the intent of search volume. This is the United States, what I'm circling here, so 60,000 based on Pinot Grigio versus 10,000 for Pinot Gris. So clearly Pinot Grigio has far more search intent data on a global scale as well, because on the right you can see 170 versus 76. So again, in terms of branding, Pinot Grigio is crushing it. Pinot Gris there, but Pinot Grigio is on a different planet. Then another thing to take a look at is from like a bulk keyword analysis of things that might be relevant to this region. I may have missed some, but these were the high-level things. So the thing to take a look at is the actual volume. So see, Pinot Grigio has the most volume and then quickly falls off by region, the synonym of Pinot Grigio, and then certain regions. But basically, people are searching for Pinot Grigio. So, last part, what can you do? So there's 3 things about user engagement levels. We've heard other people talk about user engagement, and for me, it's pretty simple. It's like, I don't know you, non ti conosco, lo ti conosco, and ti amo. So when you're thinking about, hey, what road should you take in terms of trying to get more market share or more marketing or more people's attention, what do you focus on? So there's 3 basic ones I pulled at. And the simple one here is that in the non ti conosco category, Americans have no idea where Veneto is. Straight up. They know where Italy is, but the region, they don't know. As much as we think they might know, they don't. Pinot Gris, Pinot Grigio, great, everyone knows it, so lo ti conosco. And then lastly, terroir is just really nerdy, and most people don't get into this category, but this is where you want people to go. You want people to ti amo, right? So if you can get people in here, they are the people that will convert more people to come down to this level. So, focusing on the region of where Pinot Grigio is from, I think is the winning strategy for here to get more people to understand the sense of place, specifically for these people. So I'm pointing at Gen Z, millennials, people like to take selfies and like to basically drive everything based on experiences. And I just want to pull out a couple quick examples. Social media is really all about like, does this make me look cool? And they're looking for cool stuff to help them look cool. It sounds ridiculous, but it's truly how it works. Another point of context, which I think people forget about, is maps. People spend an extraordinary amount of time looking for things in a mapping situation, specifically for tourism. If I'm going to go to a certain place, where should I go? And again, what's cool here? What's nearby? So if you have a restaurant or a winery or any place people go to, the photographs and information that are there are excessively important. Search, pretty straightforward, but if I'm looking for answers, are you there to give me the answer? Or is there someone else doing the job for you? You should be doing both, really. In person, this one might not be as relevant here, but it's worth noting just generally for wine tourism is that the experience from start to finish needs to be put in consideration, and the one that I always see being the forgotten one is the parking lot experience. The second you park, you're starting to engage with that person to be like, hey, is this going to be a good experience? Am I excited to take my phone out, take a photograph? How can you try and amplify that signal? So I took a little look at searching on Instagram, which, by the way, how many people here search on Instagram? Just show of hands. Yeah, not a ton. Try it. It's fascinating. So when you look for Veneto wine, my general reaction is, because I'm seeing bottles of wine and people holding wine, which is completely forgettable. Like, you see this all over the place. It's just not very interesting. However, there's a couple standouts, which could be cliched, but get the attention. And again, go take a look yourself and be like, specifically like this middle one, it simply says dove, right? So where? And you have my interest. I'm gonna be like, where is this? What is going on? I wanna learn more. It gets your attention. It gets you to go like, I need to learn more about Veneto. And then you can go down that path into the lo ti conosco. And lastly, young people do not care about scores. They care about being cool or looking cool. And at the end of the day, they just want to learn. So we need to teach them. That's it. Grazie.
Thank you, David. I believe that the education data are very important to understand what is the needs of the knowledge about the wines, and also regarding the last slide is about the importance for the young people to be cool, and the importance, of course, of the social media. Thank you again. So now we are going to Felicity Carter. Felicity Carter, which now she's the executive editor of The Drop, the editorial arm of the Peak search engine. But Felicity, for me, is really one of the best wine economy journalists. I read almost all of your articles, and I'm always happy when I can read it. So, what can you tell us about the positioning, how to increase the perception of Pinot Grigio in the market? You know very well.
Okay, so what I did, because I'm in media, is I went and had a look at what the media have to say about Pinot Grigio. Because if you're being talked about, it's more important than not being talked about. So what did I find? I went into a database called Nexus Lexis. Now, Nexus Lexis has everything published in every European language going back to about 1970. It also has other languages, but obviously I can't search them. And I simply put in the words Pinot Grigio. And what you find is that, early on people weren't talking about it. I mean, you can see for yourself. Now, why do people talk about something in the media? It's generally because there's a news value in the country. So, for example, at the moment, the news in Estonia is full of Pinot Grigio, and the reason is that exports to Estonia have just increased, and so it's showing up here. Nexus Lexis does some really interesting things. It can break down who is talking about you, so most of it has been happening in the English language, second in Germany, third in Holland, which tracks the export markets. And as you can see, newspapers talk about it the most, but there's some blogs talking about it, there's some television and so on. Now this is really interesting. The next thing it does is shows you what are the associations with Pinot Grigio. So on the left-hand side you see the companies, wine.com, okay, it sells a lot. That's not a great surprise. On the right-hand side, you see the celebrities who've been associated with Pinot Grigio. I do not, for the life of me, know why Donald Trump is there. I spent all of last night searching. There's no evidence that he's ever held a glass of Pinot Grigio. I don't know where that comes from. Pierre Steinbrück, that's interesting. He is the most associated person with Pinot Grigio across the media for the last 12 years. Why is this? Well, who is he? He was a minister in Germany. I think he was the head of North Rhine-Westphalia. And he was running for Chancellor of Germany, and he pretty much wrecked his chances because he said, when somebody said, are you going to increase childcare subsidy of €10? He said, no way, that would cost us €1 billion. And anyway, what would you get for €10? You get 2 packets of cigarettes and probably 2 glasses of Pinot Grigio, and I'd only buy it by the glass because there's no way I would buy a cheap Pinot Grigio. And this showed him as being very out of touch. So Der Spiegel said this was probably one of the most regretted statements by politicians ever. But to his point about being out of touch, so they asked all these wine critics, can you get good Pinot Grigio for under €5? It was this huge media scandal. But let's have a look at, in the German market, which is a top export market, is Pinot Grigio really that cheap? And the answer is yes. This is a screen grab from Havesco. Havesco is one of the biggest wine companies in Germany. It has a whole bunch of retail outlets. It has online arms. It has a whole lot of different brands. But the Hevesco online brand is sort of where they put their premium branded product. And this is what comes up as the most popular Pinot Grigio. So it's all under €8. And I want you to remember this. So what is the media saying about Pinot Grigio? Well, not very nice things 10 years ago. So this was a piece in the New York Times by Eric Asimov. And as you can see, he's been quite scathing. This piece was about, he wanted to know why sommeliers wouldn't list Pinot Grigio on their wine lists, even though it was such an incredibly popular wine. So he set out to do a tasting because he said, I think these sommeliers are just being snobs. And at the end of the article, he said, you know what, they're right. Pinot Grigio is a terrible grape and I can't recommend it. So that was 2014. What are the critics saying now? So I'll just get past this. So if you look at the terms Pinot Grigio and Italy, you can see that, this is in the English language, that there's actually increased interest in Pinot Grigio right now, which is tracking the premiumisation trend. Now, some of this is to do with other places that have also done premiumisation. So Oregon in particular is getting a lot of interest, and so is Alta Adige. But the coverage is much more positive now. I went through and I read a lot of the articles, and there's a lot of very popular wines is usually they rise. You saw this with Australian Shiraz, and then they fall. You saw this with Argentine Malbec, that things get very, very popular, and then people get tired of them. And this has never happened in New Zealand. Their export price is ex-cellar, not in bottle, is €2.48. It's actually quite high per litre. How did they manage to do this when almost no other popular grape has done it? So this is, you can see that annual exports keep increasing. They increased last year 22% to the United States. They increased 10% to Holland. They increased, you know, they had huge increases. How do they keep managing growth year on year? Well, they do 5 things which are really important. So first of all, they link it to New Zealand. New Zealand had a very successful 20-year-old advertising campaign called 100% Pure New Zealand. They sold the idea that New Zealand is this pure, untouched, amazing place. And all of their products have had the halo effect from that. Secondly, every 2 years, they do an event about Sauvignon Blanc, usually in Wellington or somewhere. It's very prestigious. It's a lot of fun. Every time I've been invited, which is twice in 10 years, every other wine writer in the world writes to me and says, can you get me in on this? They really make a big deal out of it. And what's really interesting is the critics who accept the invitation to go are people who have publicly said they hate Sauvignon Blanc, but they still want to go to the event. Sauvignon Blanc also has an unusual taste, which people can pick, which people like. But the industry also keeps a very close eye on pricing. So they have regular congresses and seminars amongst themselves where they talk about how do we keep our price high. And they're very disciplined about it. They will not allow people to export wine in bulk under a certain price. Now, this was a really big deal back in 2008 when they had what they called a Savalanche. They had a huge overproduction of Sauvignon Blanc. And people were hurting. They really wanted to sell it as cheaply as they could just to get rid of it. But the peer pressure was not to do that, and that has helped keep the price high. And the final one is something that is almost unique to New Zealand, which is the collegiate working style. If you go to Provine, if somebody takes a toilet break, the guy next to him will pour his wines and talk it up. They're all talking up their product of their neighbours. Now I want to talk about another wine, Lugana, which also has a very high per litre price. It's €3.56. 70% of it is exported to Germany. Now, everyone complains that wine writers never tell the truth, that they're always complimentary. This is not true of German wine writers. They tell the truth. So this is an article from the Süddeutsche Zeitung, where the writer actually says, why the hell are so many Germans drinking this really terrible, boring wine? I mean, he actually says, you know, it's got nothing. It's just industrial winemaking. He was so appalled that Germans were slugging this back that he went to Lake Garda to find out. And he goes through and he just says, this wine's got nothing going for it. But here's how they did it. It's because Germans like going on holiday to Lake Garda. It is their favourite holiday destination. They love being there. They stay a week, and when they go, they drink Lugana. So they want to take that experience home with them. And this effect is so strong that sales of Lugana are rising in the Czech Republic because Germans go there and they want to take their beloved wine with them. Now, this is a really important point because have a look at who in the media is talking about Pinot Grigio. The Italians in 43 years have only talked about it 1,300 times. If you want the rest of the world to get excited about Pinot Grigio, the people you have to convince are Italians. And the reason for this is the world is travelling at the moment. And the number one reason why people travel is for food and wine. If they come to Italy and they come here to this incredibly spectacular place and they don't see Pinot Grigio treated as a national treasure, they won't take it home with them. You won't get the Lugana effect. And it's not just overseas visitors. Italians themselves are travelling for food and wine. If I was going to do a strategy to increase the visibility of Pinot Grigio from Veneto, I would get every sommelier in the room and train them on how important this product is and how great many of the examples are. Because the way now to sell wine is through wine tourism, to make people who come and visit you fall in love with it. And that's basically my biggest insight of today. So thank you very much.
Thank you, really thank you, Felicity. I believe that your also provocation regarding some important subject can be very useful also to understand how to promote in a better way the Italian Pinot Grigio. And I believe also the example of New Zealand, mainly to link to the territory, is very important, but the Italian must before understand that Pinot Grigio is really a prestigious Italian wine. So now I change the language again, I back to Italian. Quindi con,
as you prefer.
If you prefer, we
But
can
no.
Possiamo
in italiano.
però tornare in italiano. I
in
ask
italiano.
also if Felicity and David, if they want to come back, maybe they can put the headphone, because now we will speak in Italian, and I don't know if you can understand Italian or... yeah.
Okay.
Because I believe that Daniele at the end is very important to try to listen him and to understand him. Daniele Cernilli, insomma, presentarlo potrebbe essere veramente una perdita
Daniele
di tempo, ma
Cernilli,
insomma,
it's a waste of time to try and introduce him. He works for Dr. Wine and is the author of the guide Vini d'Italia. And even more importantly, he's a great expert of Italian wines. He's one of the few who can compare Italian wines with other international wines. So he's an added value. Daniele, we have heard how popular Pinot Grigio is. So this was shown by the market trends and the platforms and also search in education data. So can you please tell us what can be done in order to make it even more popular in Italy? Why is a Pinot Noir so well known, since they are related? Well, they are not only related, they are twins. Genetically speaking, they are identical twins. This is a less colored version of a Pinot Noir. That's what it is. And it is a direct inbreeding. I mean, they are two twins. we have Pinot Grigio and Pinot Bianco. They are twins between themselves, and Pinot Noir is related to both of them. If you look at the leaves, you can't distinguish the leaves of Pinot Grigio and Pinot Bianco. They are very similar. Pinot Grigio, however, has a number of positive virtues and then some inconsistencies. What are they? Well, it is more famous abroad than in Italy. That's absurd, paradoxical. 250 million bottles, that's a great deal. That's the second largest after Prosecco. This is one of the reference points of Italian winemaking, 250 million bottles, over 1 billion turnover, 40 euros per bottle, which is not too little. It is more famous abroad. It is known as Pinot Grigio, and the origin is not known. The fact that it is grown and made in Le Venezie, this is not known. The Italians pay more attention to the origins, to the roots. Well, Barolo, think of Barolo and Nebbiolo, Chianti Classico versus Sangiovese. So connect the grape with the origin is going to be a very winning idea, because paradoxically Pinot Grigio in Italy is not seen as an Italian wine. Well, this is absurd because it is, a flagship wine. It's more famous abroad than in Italy. We have to bring it back. It must be felt as Italian as it is felt abroad. And it is a varietal from Burgundy. It was born there. Pinot Noir is from Burgundy, substantially. That's what it is. And same thing for Pinot Grigio. If you visit Burgundy, the Burgundian vineyards, which is not a single grape, if you visit the area, you can see every now and then some grapes. They are white and others they are less colored. This is a Pinot Grigio inside the Grand Pinot Noir vineyards. It's a tiny proportion, but it is there. Another paradox is Alsace. Until recently, it was called Tocqué d'Alsace. It was not even named Pinot Grigio, but it was such. And also Malvoisie de Neuse, it is a different variety of Pinot Grigio. It comes from Valle d'Aosta, but it is not named Pinot Grigio. Now we have Delle Venezia, which is a big opportunity in order to make this wine better known. It is not northern Italy, it is northeastern Italy. That's very important. And Pinot Grigio in the northern eastern area of Italy is like a Pinot Noir in Burgundy. This must be said very clearly. We have to speak up and make the point all the time. Pinot Grigio must be reconciled with Italy and with its production area. For the moment, it has to do with style. Pinot Grigio means white wine, Italian origin, and oak. This is the common perception in international consumers. So someone said early on, an American consumer has no clue of where the Veneto is. Well, probably they know where Venice is. If I were to ask you, what about Baltimore and Philadelphia? Which one is north? More north. Philadelphia is closer to New York. Baltimore is closer to Washington. So Philadelphia is more north. These are huge cities, but Italians don't know how to spot them or pinpoint them. It's like asking in an American, which one is more north? Is it Bologna or Florence? We know, but they don't know. So we don't know such things about the United States. How can we expect an ordinary American drinker know everything about ourselves? We have to tell them, we have to train and educate them. And then, do you know the South Australia appellation do you know how big it is? It covers an area from Spain to Romania. It's huge. Now, talking about California, California is twice as big as Italy, and the Californian appellations are many. However, if Californian wines means nothing. There is Santa Barbara, Napa Valley, Etna Valley. I mean, there are many places, and there are many places or locations that we don't distinguish, and we call it Californian wines. Well, in the world, many use the phrase Italian wine, and there isn't such a thing as an Italian wine. Please don't do that with the Pinot Grigio. 85% of Italy-made Pinot Grigio is grown in the appellation Delle Venezie. And since half of the worldwide Pinot Grigio is made in Italy, it means that most of it is grown and made in this area. Well, this is what emerges from what we heard so far. It's a question of gluing or binding things together. The name Pinot Grigio and Delle Venezie, they should be combined. Well, I wish that the Venezie appellation were only for Pinot Grigio, but I know that it cannot be done. Anyway, Pinot Grigio must be the main protagonist of the appellation. So you have to find a very strong, a much stronger relationship between Venezia and Pinot Grigio. Pinot Grigio was introduced in 1960. Italian Pinot Grigio, as we mean it. It was a winery from Portogruaro, one of the first vinification in white in the Italian history of viticulture. In the past, the horizontal presses were introduced at the time. Before that, it was difficult to obtain a white wine from red berries. I mean, there was a turning point. Then Conte Marzotto from Valdagno was the first one making a Pinot Grigio like that. A guy in Chicago, Tony Terlato, after some time realized that and introduced the same thing in the United States. Pinot Grigio is an Italian wine from a French varietal, being so successful in the United States because there was this connection between an Italian aristocrat and a Chicago importer in the United States. And that was, very fashionable. It went off like a bomb. It was explosive, fantastic, and that's the reason why Pinot Grigio is more famous overseas than it is in Italy. And it is more famous than Pinot Gris. Well, the variety is the same. What changes is the wine style, and the Alsatian wine style is other than the Italian wine. And then the variety of the grape, the versatility. So, what is unique about this wine is is skin. If you do a vinification on the skins, you can obtain a ramato. This is a possibility. I would reserve it for part of the production, and I would start introducing or increasing the share of Rosato. Rosato is so popular, sort of super pink. Why not? There are examples in our wine guide. We have awarded il Pinot Grigio Ramato from Trentino. It's not Delle Venezia, but anyway, this proves a point. This is what we should do. It's not just a geographical question. Venezia means a lot. Francesco said, this is one of the most beautiful places in the world, you know. And so the wine is good, it comes from popular vineyards, and it is produced in one of the most beautiful places in the world. That's a chance that you cannot afford to miss, because this is one of the best places in the world. Thank you for listening to me. Thank you. I thank you from the bottom of my heart. Your conclusions are very thought-provoking. You have condensed the take-home messages from other speakers. So you see, this grape has found its ideal location. They must be told. There must be a narrative, because the market must recognize the importance of the origin. At the same time, you know, we should emphasize the Italian style, which was the very reason why Italian wines are so very well known all over the world. So Pinot Grigio must be better known and better loved on the domestic market. David and Felicity have stressed the fact that the beauty of the production areas is a main driver. It is also easily understandable by the consumers, regardless of where they live. I'd like to ask Albino Armani to come up front. David and Felicity, please return to your seats in the floor. We are late. We are a bit late, but we can accommodate any questions, if any. There should be a roving mic in the floor. The young ladies are bringing a mic to you if you have questions. If there are no questions, well, I think that we've abused your patience. Since there are no questions, please, Albino, come over here, and so that you can say goodbye to the guests that have been so kind to listen to us for hours and hours. I'd like to thank the President Armani, and I thank the Consortium for giving me this chance to chair this meeting. It was a privilege for me. I've listened to very educational hints, and this is the second edition. The previous one was 2019, but I encourage Albino to organize such events more frequently, because they are so useful. I leave you on such a positive note. We have heard very good comments from United States, and also what Wine Folly said is very reassuring. So they are giving us hints on how to best cope with the future challenges. Albino, you have the floor. Thank you all. Well, optimist myself. I share your feelings. We are happy of what we've accomplished, and we must be aware of how much we have achieved and how important it is to disseminate the concepts that have been discussed. So in the future, we shall focus on promotion, but also on education. This was reiterated all the time. So many of you pointed out that we have a long way to go. However, we have heard from Antonio how much we did in order to be in line with very high standards. So in this connection, I'm very happy about myself. Well, the territorial cohesion is a point that was made by most of you. And however, I'm so happy to say that we were able to combine 3 different regions. And finally, communication. We have to communicate very clearly that this is the home to Pinot Grigio, and I ask you to make this clear, because I think it is essential in order to achieve sustainability, not only environmental but also economic sustainability of this grape and appellation. So I don't want to take up too much of your time. I'd like to thank my staff. They've been so good. And thank you from the bottom of my heart, and I'll see you next time. The gentleman from the councillor from Friuli asked that we would do something like this in Friuli. We are there by your side. We are ready to take up any messages from you. Thank you for being with us.